All right, if we could get your attention, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tony Hopson. I'm President and CEO here at Self-Enhancement 8, but also this morning representing the African American Community Coordinating Group, a group of black men that came together a few months ago to talk about and come up with some answers and solutions to many of the issues and problems that are facing the black community. The speakers here will introduce themselves as they take turns at the mic. You know, this morning's press conference is about Harriet Tubman Middle School, a key landmark for the Portland black community. We know that there is a long-term history of betrayal toward the black community. We have countless examples of many of those betrayals, which are all, or many of which are connected to Tubman Middle School. One, what the community went through to actually create Tubman. I'm sure when Mr. Herndon gets the mic, he can give you a little history on what we went through to actually get Tubman up and running. The fact that the K-8 experiment by the district disproportionately impacted the Jefferson High School cluster. The fact that we went K-8 only primarily in the Jefferson cluster and did not impact other areas within Portland Public Schools. The fact that we closed down a very successful SEI Academy as a direct result of the proposed opening of Tubman, which should have been this past fall. Over the past 2 months, we have heard Tubman's on schedule to open, oops, Tubman not going to open, a plan B open, and now in the last board meeting, we have heard that we're now back on schedule to open next fall. There's a broad community of parents and citizens from Boyce Elliott, Sabin, King, Irvington, all now weighing in on this Tubman issue. But there's a black community that still carries the pain and the scars of decades of betrayal. So today, we are simply pulling all of these communities together to say what you promise, you must actually deliver. On behalf of the poor children and the children of color that have been most impacted by the process, let them now become the district's highest priority. We believe if these children are the highest priority, irregardless of what things are impacting the Tubman facility, there is time and resources that can clean all of that up. We hope that today's press conference begins a celebration of what will be, not the continuation of what has been. I think it's somewhat historical that you have representation of the community, but you also have the superintendent sitting here as well. So I do want to say that I think that is somewhat historical, because in the past we have never had a press conference where both sides are at the table together. I see that as a step in the right direction, yet we have a lot of work to do, but the fact that he is willing to be here and be a part of this press conference and stand with us around the direction that we're headed, I believe is a very positive step.
Yes, my name is Dr. Leroy Haynes. I'm representing the Albina Ministerial Alliance as part of the African American Coordinating Committee, representing some 200 churches in the north and northeast Portland. We indeed are thankful for the decision of the school board and affirming the necessity and the essential element of keeping Harriet Tubman. We feel that in an era of gentrification where the African American community is losing out in many instances. According to the last census, 10,000 African Americans were pushed out of the city. And so we believe that this infrastructure, this institution, an education institution, is critically important to achieving diversity and also giving a first priority to African Americans in returning back to the inner city, returning back to housing, returning back to educational institution, returning back to the job market. If we're going to have an educational system and a city that is reflective of a diverse community, a pluralistic community, it is contingent upon this essential element of having institutions like Harriet Tubman in this process. And so we will move from here to other aspects of this, but this is a first step, and we must keep the school board and the superintendent under critique as we move forward.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Joe McFerrin, President and CEO of Portland OIC in the Rosemary Anderson High School. I'm here on behalf of our board, our staff, students and families that we serve in support of this effort to get Harriet Tubman open, and not only open, but open in a way that's very supportive and effective for African American students. As I look back historically at the impact of Portland Public Schools on African American kids and families, I was somewhat saddened. As a student of Portland Public Schools, there were a lot of things going on around busing, around mistreatment, around low standards for African American students that were going on while I was at Beach, while I went to Canton, while I went to Ockley Green, and then on to Grant High School. And so for me, this is a bit of an emotional touch point for me, and I hope the superintendent will join us in making sure that we make these things happen. As an organization, we work with the criminal justice system, we work with housing, we work with employment, and African Americans are losing in every statistical category. And the graduation rate is abysmal, and we should all be upset and just, I mean, I can't even, since this may be on TV, I can't say what I really want to say about how I feel about our outcomes, but I'm hopeful that together we can truly make a difference, and I think getting Harriet Tubman opened as soon as possible will help us achieve those goals. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ronnie Herndon. I'm the director of Albina Head Start, and some would say, why Tubman? Why is this so important? We have to go back several decades. Portland had a system that they called desegregation that did a great deal of harm to black children. Black children were the only children in Portland who were mandatorily bussed out of their community. Schools in Portland were all K-8. They took the upper grades in all those K-8 schools in the black community, King, Humboldt, boys, they got rid of them. Those children were mandatorily bussed all over Portland. The kids from King were bussed to 32 different schools. You think about it as a small child, the same time that Joe was going through, you grow up with a community. That community is torn asunder forever. Your parents can't get to after-school activities. Hard to participate in extracurricular activities. Then, with that empty space in the school, they created these accelerated preschool programs, extra materials, special teachers. Those were only for white children. So you see, now you have integration. You got white children in the preschool program. You got black children K through 5 in the same building. Guess what? The black kids could not get in the preschool program. Black kids living right across the street from the school could not get in the preschool program. It was one of the worst forms of segregation this side of Mississippi. And then they promised, well, all those kids that got bussed out, they have to go to a middle school, but they made the parents sign a piece of paper that said that when your kid gets to be high school age, you will not bring them back to the Albina. Yeah, only parents, it's almost like the pass system in South Africa. The only parents who had to sign that statement that said, you will not bring your kids home to go to school. Then they said, well, yeah, every middle school, every child will have an assigned middle school. Every child will have an assigned. Guess the kids who never had assigned middle school, right here. So that's what the fight for Tubman was all about. One, get rid of the busing program. We did that with the boycott demonstrations. We got rid of the busing program. Now the promise about the middle school. The only school in this area that could be considered for a middle school was called Elliott. That was Tubman's name before we created the middle school. And we said the school that should be used for the middle school should be Elliott. That's why. Because the students there were not from this neighborhood. There were approximately 40 kids out of 300 plus from this neighborhood. The students there were, again, it was accelerated school, were primarily white kids from across the river. That's why we said it has to be that site, because it will not, again, disrupt neighborhoods and attendance patterns in Portland for black children. Good question. Well, where are those children going to go? So here's the answer. Boyce had a lot of space. Take Elliott kids and let them go to Boyce. It's got enough space. That's how it became Boyce Elliott. That's the genesis of Boyce Elliott. At the point the school district said, okay, we had to have federal mediation, bust up school, the board meetings, table walking, all sorts of things to force them to say yes. Same arguments you hear today came up then. All of a sudden, oh, what about the bad air coming up from the freeway? I said, wasn't the air bad when the white kids were going to school? You didn't say nothing about it then. Oh, the school might slide down to the freeway. Well, what about them white kids? There wasn't no sliding down the freeway when they was in it. They have some magical powers to keep the schools from sliding, but black kids don't have those kind of powers. What is it? Same arguments you hear today, we heard 35 years ago. Exactly. That's the thing that gets me. Can't you come up with a new fake? The exact same fake that we heard 35 years ago. Sliding schools, bad air, and here we go. This is one of the things to keep your eye on. If we're going to test for bad air coming from the freeway, I'm just as concerned about the little kids at Lincoln. I'm just as concerned about the kids over at, what's the tech school, Benson? We got to test over there also. Now, we're going to test for bad air coming from freeways and truck traffic. We got to test to help protect those kids too. It's only right. So, going forward, that's why Tubman is important, because if you don't have an assigned middle school, your children end up being dispersed everywhere. There's no sense of community. There's no sense of history. There's no sense of culture. There's no sense of the adults care enough about me to ensure that I get a quality education that was promised in my community. That's why Tubman is important. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Guadalupe Guerrero, new superintendent of the Portland Public Schools. And while I've only been on the job for about 6 weeks, this is a topic that is of keen importance to me, as much as clearly it is to the school community. I want to start off with a strong statement. The Portland Public School Board of Education and the district are committed to opening Harriet Tubman as a comprehensive middle school, grades 6 through 8, for the fall of 2018. At this point in the process, there's not a plan B. We're not concurrently looking for an alternative site. The district is pursuing an aggressive timeline to make sure that the school is ready to accept students and staff in late August. There's the political will now, and now there's also the resources being set aside. The district is budgeting and intends to spend, as necessary, over $11 million on renovations to Harriet Tubman's facility. That includes a new roof, new HVAC, which will include state-of-the-art filtering to ensure air quality, just to double down on that. We're working with the Oregon DEQ and the federal EPA to test the air and the soil at Harriet Tubman, just to make sure it meets standards for an educational institution. However, based on past testing, we did take a little bit of a timeout to many of us are new, to make sure we look back and see if there's any evidence of any concerns, but we haven't seen any results that we believe will prevent us from opening the school as scheduled. There is the only caveat, however, if the testing shows that something's unsuitable, we won't open it, because none of us would want to put our children at any kind of a risk. But we're going to take every possible mitigation step that we can take to make sure that that's not the case. Safety of our students is always going to be our top priority, and we'll be asking questions about all of our facilities if that tends to be the case. As work gets underway, we will provide regular updates on the progress. That includes more details on the programming, the staffing, classroom design and layout, etc. Like you, we are excited at the prospect of once again opening a comprehensive middle school in the Albina area. Our aspiration is that the Harriet Tubman Middle School, this is much more than about a physical building. It's about establishing and supporting a thriving school community. District leadership and I, we look forward to moving forward that aspiration and making it a reality here in partnership with the school community. Thank you.
Any questions from the media first? You all did a great job. Audience, any questions from the audience? Yes, gentleman up here in the blue shirt.
What are we going to do about lead and water?
That's a great question, young man. Well, some of you might have been following the story, but just to recap, I'm coming aboard a broad community that has passed a very important bond, almost $800 million. There's some set aside in there to make sure we take care of these health and safety concerns. You may have noticed that work has commenced. There are 10,982 water fixtures. We've got to replace, test before we open up so our students can have safe drinking water. Already in this first 6 weeks, or this cycle of replacing water fixtures, 15 schools every 6 weeks will be brought online so students can safely drink from their water faucets. The goal is to replace those over 10,000 water fixtures by the last day of school this school year. That's a very aggressive timeline, but that's the commitment, and so far the work is on track. Health and safety, priority number one, but soon, coming to a school near you, it should be that clean drinking water faucet.
Before the next question, I'd like to just say something. I think it was last Thursday, a week ago, Lorenzo Poe, Tony Hopson, and myself, we met with Superintendent Guerrero. And exactly what he said to you, he said to us. This is where we're going to end up. And I just wanted to congratulate him for taking the leadership on this issue and making a commitment to opening up Tubman and showing up here. Tony, as Tony said, this is historic. I've never seen this in the years that I've been around town. So this is historic. Congratulations on your leadership and your courage to be part of this. Questions?
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'll get right back to you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I wanted to know, do we know who's in control of doing the hiring for the staff?
Beyond the building, we know what matters most is what happens in between those walls, and we know to have a thriving school community, we've got to have strong teaching and learning, and one critical component of that is who the educators are. Educators who want to be there, that are committed to the school community, that know and understand and care about our students, who have the ability to be culturally responsive, who have the content knowledge, the skill set, and desire to work as a team to make this a fantastic school we all expect it to be. We're working through how do we create some flexibilities so that the school's leadership and community can screen for, interview, and select the kind of staff that's going to make that kind of success possible. It is true that there are some collective bargaining and teachers' unions constraints that we're working with their leadership right now to see what kind of flexibilities we can ensure, because we want to make sure we provide the maximum flexibility for who gets to teach there at Tubman.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what changed between like a month ago or 2 months ago and then just the school board finally deciding to go ahead and commit to Tubman opening next August. You know, what changed between then and now? Why the about this? Not about this.
Well, the plan all along has been to open up in fall 2018. New board, new superintendent, community started raising questions. Apparently they've been asked before. We thought it'd be prudent to just time out, let's go back, let's search all the records, let's dig up everything we know about this building, let's look at all those air quality tests that we are aware of or anything else. We reviewed those thousands of documents, pulled out the ones that seem most relevant, transparently posted those on our homepage so anybody could see those, drafted a summary memo. There are no indications in there that there's anything unsafe or they can't be remediated, and so we went back to the game and said, we're going to stay on track and we're going to stay aggressive about this timeline. So the only thing that changed is that we paused to make sure that those questions were answered, any doubts that may have been there. It's not a political issue. It's if the health and safety of our kids is being brought up as a question, we would just want to make sure and have a solid response to that. And just to make sure, that's why we're bringing in DEQ and EPA, just to make sure that in fact is the case.
I want to, before we answer any more questions, I want to remind folks that there is also a second piece of this, the right to return, and which is also new and different. To be able to have many of our students that have been pushed out through gentrification to Outer East, they have the right to return back to Tubman. Now, there's a lot of legalities around that, and the numbers that of seats that we could have at Tubman. There's some questions about that as well. But if in fact you know folks that are now living in Outer East that would want to come back, there is a survey that has been made available that's out there. Lisa, is there something that we could?
There is a link, and I can make sure that everybody gets it.
Yeah, if you want to just holler at Lisa before you leave to get that link, because we sincerely need folks that really want to come back to fill out the survey, because the district will want to know how many folks actually do want to come back. Now, many of us in this room already know that there are several students that already live out there that are already going to school over here, that are at Boyce and Jefferson and many of the schools. So we know that the numbers are large. We don't think that our families should have to give false addresses just to come back home. So we'd like to legalize this.
Superintendent, the present chair, Julia Brim Edwards, sign off on this Tubman issue? Because I remember last time I saw them at the school board, she made a commitment that Tubman was in fact going to respond. So now all of a sudden, here we are, it's going back and forth, back and forth. Did she sign off on what you just made the statement?
Well, I can't speak for the time before arriving here, but I can say, in fact, just this past Tuesday evening and at the regular board meeting before that, she's spoken pretty publicly in unison with the Board of Education that full steam ahead. We're going to work proactively towards opening the school, and I haven't heard anything but for support for doing that on behalf of the Board of Education. So I'm not aware of any doubt or lack of support from our board. We have full authority to move forward.
In all due respect, and I know you haven't been here that long, but she was part of the issues and some of the problems. She was on the school board years back, and she was one of the problems as far as the issues that we're talking about as far as black kids are concerned. She's back at the board night at this point in time, and I'm really having some concerns as to whether or not we're going to do here, whether there's going to be a commitment. What about Jefferson High School, by the way? That was the other thing. What about Jefferson High School? We passed this largest bond issue aspect of it. We argued about it, and all of a sudden it gets passed, but Jefferson is left out, almost like Tubman. Are you going to renovate that situation for us?
Right out.
That's a great question. It's a good topic. I think with this 2017 bond, I believe there are a list of sites that were identified. Hopefully, the broader community sees that, those projects are equitably distributed, but I think that's a whole other conversation. We certainly welcome that we have, because like you, I share the concern that so many of our buildings do need physical renovation and modernization, and, we ought to prioritize our underserved communities.
Thank you,
I just want to say regarding the survey, it is available at the Self-Enhancement website. Go to www.selfenhancement.org, and there's a link to the survey. You can take it mobile, or there's also paper surveys. If anybody wants paper surveys today, I'll be happy to get them some.
Bruce, one of the problems is that before the superintendent arrived, the bond measure that you talked about, and this is long before the superintendent arrived, there was discussion about, from what I understand, there was discussion about putting, this was before Julia Brim Edwards was reelected to the board. The previous board had discussions about putting Jefferson on that bond. And the decision was made not to do it because they thought it might have a negative impact on passing the bond. Now, nobody's going to admit that publicly, but as they say on Perry Mason, I have it on good authority. That was the discussion, and that's the issue that we have raised with the board. And again, this predates Julia, this predates Superintendent Guerrero. That the board had that discussion and made that decision. We brought it up. When are you going to renovate, Jeff? I don't care about the next bond measure. I don't know what's going to happen. What are you going to do now?
So we'll have time for a couple more questions. I got a student up there, and then we'll come down here. Yes, sir, young man.
Out of all the ES schools in the district, why pick was I could say it again, jump out.
Why pick Boise Elliott to do what? He came to your school.
Well, there's one thing that I think a superintendent of schools should make a priority, and that's to visit our schools on a regular basis. And I had the good fortune on my first, one of my first days on the job, first day of school actually, to make sure that I prioritized visiting Boise Elliott. So I had a great time there talking with students. I know I caught you guys at lunchtime, but I had a chance to sit at the lunch table and talk to a lot of students and hear what you love about your school. And I got to spend some time with your principal and really enjoyed that. And I'm looking forward to coming back for a second visit and take a look at the classroom learning. But thanks for calling that out.
I'm sorry, you still didn't answer the young man's question. He asked why. What's his question? Wasn't that your question, young man? Yeah, you still didn't answer the question.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Well, one is, I want to make sure and visit schools in different neighborhoods and different communities. And this was a school that, the team felt that, I should prioritize. And as I heard a little bit more about it, I know that it serves the community there. I agree that, I want to make sure and take a look at what's happening at Boise Elliott. So as simple as that.
Okay. First things first. I actually had a question for the African American Coordinating Committee. I was wondering two questions. How was this committee comprised? And two, is there a specific reason as to why no women sit on your board? The sort of question also about the right to return. Being part of a community that's representing a broader community, we already have a gauge on families. We could get a list, but at the same time, we wouldn't want to pull that list because then we're putting our parents at risk. The ones who are right now outside of the current boundaries, then they automatically are at risk if we were to give that information away. So what we're looking for is a real, authentic communication, and I heard regular updates will be coming about the transition as Tubman is open, which that's beautiful. But again, for us, we need specifics, bricks and mortar. What does that look like exactly? How does the school board feel they will be successful in authentically communicating and engaging with the community, like bullet points? What does that look like? What would that feel like for us when that's happening? And yes, similar question with the hiring process. Again, specifics. You alluded to the need for doing it the right way. Absolutely. What does the right way look like? Once the contracts are in place, signed and ready to go, community engagement throughout and within the hiring process, what does that look like?
Let me try this one. This group came together last, I think it was mid-May, early June, because of the increased racist violence that was occurring in the city, and also because of the uptick in gang activity. And the deciding factor, at least for me, was when there was a gang shooting and someone decided to purposely shoot a 9-year-old kid 3 or 4 times. And I spoke with a good friend, Jerry Lawrence, and Charles Meyer, who's not here. I said, we need to get people to stand up and say something about this publicly. When you get to the point that you can shoot innocent children with impunity, there has to be some kind of public censure. And we said that we want to get black men to stand up and say something about this. So we called, sent out the word, and in this very building, we had over 200 black men who showed up. It was packed all around here to make the statement. We may not be able to stop you from doing this, but please don't assume that you have the permission, you have the concurrence of the black community, and we want men to stand up and say that to harm children. Number one, that was number one. Number two, while we were here, we said there are 3 issues. Tony talked about them, Joe talked about them, Reverend Haynes talked about them, that we need to push if there is going to be a rebirth in the black community that's been pushed out and that has been and is being dispersed. Housing that can be affordable and certainly for home ownership. 2, education that brings us to Tubman. 3, jobs. There need to be a concerted effort in all 3 areas. And to get to your question about women at this table, every meeting that we have is open to the public. The people who started this movement are sitting right here. At no point have we said that anybody is going to be prevented from attending, taking part in decisions, discussions. And I'll tell you what I have gotten. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a sister last week who's been active a long time. I said, make sure you know about the meeting. I want to say, no, I don't want to come. If you got brothers doing something positive, I don't want to get it. So anybody that thinks, I said, no, you say what you want, do what you want. No, so we've gotten encouragement. So that's how I got started, and that's how we're moving forward. And hopefully the issues that we address embrace the concerns of the entire black community. And moving and getting back to people who may want to come back. Again, that's an option. Nobody's asked to put their name on the survey. The only thing you give up, the number of children, your zip code, and if you want to be contacted, but let us know if you want to come back. So nobody's is trying to get people to do some dry snitching on whether or not they got their kids over here now using a fake address. So we're not asking for that, but we are asking, because we made the argument that the school district nor anyone else knows how many kids who are out there who would come back. School district arbitrarily said, we're going to set aside 75 slots for kids coming back who may want to come back to Tubman who live out of district. We said, how do you know? It's 75 more or less. The only way you're going to find out, we do a survey. So the survey does not ask for personal information, but we need to get some idea. And lastly, we still have a big hurdle with the state, because right now, the process for transferring into Portland Public Schools or any district is very complicated. And people you don't even get to the starting line until about February or March. And most parents have already started making decisions about what they want their children to do next year. So Superintendent Guerrero has sent a nice letter of support. Tony and I met with the superintendents in East County, said, look, you've got children out here whose parents want them to come back. You have any objection? No. We went to the state, because everybody said the state law has to be changed. So Tony, Lorenzo, and I went to the state, met with the leadership of the State Department of Education. And they confirmed what the folks from Portland and the superintendent said. State law is the reason why you have this complex and complicated process. State law has to change. We've approached some of the leading politicians of the state to ask them to push forward and change the law. Superintendent Guerrero wrote a nice, strong letter of support for this process. So that's why we are where we are. And we're pushing on several different fronts to make it easy. Again, it's an option. And I said lastly, this is what, for me, is extraordinarily important, that when we begin to talk about black families that have been pushed out, a lot of people say, well, that's just gentrification. No, it isn't. This community was redlined, and banks, insurance companies did not put the same kind of financial instruments at the disposal of black families as they did white families. They did not. That's not gentrification. That's illegal, unconstitutional, immoral, unethical. They also tore down black homes, 300 or 400 where the Coliseum is, 400 where Emmanuel was supposed to expand, a couple of hundred where you have the Blanchard Building. Those were homes in this community. Paul Knowles is sitting here. He can tell you about businesses that he had that were messed up. If you think about the wealth this community lost, the families were able to possess those homes, that land, given how much land is appreciated in this area, you're talking about billions of dollars of equity that was lost, gone. So, when we talk about the right to return, that is only restorative justice. If you use these illegal means to push us out, that's not gentrification. Gentrification means the land. I have as much money as you have. I want to buy a house whose property values drop. We both have action on the same piece of property. That's gentrification. But when you use illegal means, you prevent me from having those financial instruments. You take away my wealth generating property, and now you raise the property value. You raise the cost of renting. How can I stay here? That's not an accident. And we're saying the same means, the same governmental means that were used to illegally push us out will have to be used. And the right of return has been established by the city of Portland. They have said, if you can show that your family has any kind of connection to Albina, or you do, you can stand in line to get subsidized housing back here in Portland. We're saying the same right of return must be available for black families to bring their kids back. It is only justice. So that's why we're pushing on that, and now everybody don't have to come back. If people dig where they are, great, stay. But for those who want to come back, there should be an avenue for them to come back. And that's why the right of return is important. That's why the survey is important. We need to find out how many people really would want to come back, not just to Tubman, but to Jefferson, without using, as Tony said, the fake addresses, and to all the feeder schools. So that's the history on it.
And can I just add to what Ron said about what needs to happen? I would say, in addition to that, what needs to happen on the employment side is that African American people in this community need to make a significant contribution to the Central City 2035 plan and the billions of dollars that will be invested all up and down the Willamette River. I would also say that African Americans should benefit with respect to employment around what the governor is doing with ODOT and the transportation and the $5.3 or $5.2 billion that investments that are going to be happening on the freeway, particularly around the Rose Quarter. So I think all of this together, all of us together, working around education, around housing, around employment, there is a huge opportunity. You know, if you go to the Prosper Portland website, when they talk about the Central City 2035 plan, it starts off, and I love the tagline. It says it's an opportunity of a lifetime. And I think it's an opportunity of a lifetime for African Americans as it results to employment and generational wealth when it comes to building our community.
I just want to make sure and respond to the part of the question around how can we count on the Tubman school community being a part of the process leading up to the opening. And as you are probably aware, I was there on Monday evening along with members of district staff. We heard very clearly families, community members, they want to be kept up to date, they want to be part of the process. They want to be informed in real time, along with the district, how things progress. And I think the intent is very much to come back to the school community and sort of share a draft outline of how some of those work committees might look like around facility, instructional program, and staffing, so that you're working hand in hand with us on the progress in each of those areas.
So I think we're going to end it right there. Want to say thank you to all of you that have chosen to be here, to be a part of this. Understand that We recognize that there's been a lot of things said here today and a lot of things that's been said in the past. Holding people accountable to what they say is necessary. So if you're here today, make sure that you stay involved and stay engaged, because as was suggested earlier, it was one thing just a month ago and it's something else today. We hope that that doesn't happen. We believe that we have the support of this superintendent headed in the right direction. But for those of us who've been on this train for a long time, we recognize that if we're not vigilant, if we don't hold folks accountable, things could change again. So let's do that. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.